this is who we're trying to talk to. This is the list of our unique value propositions that we've identified. Let's map these value propositions to the needs of each persona. And then you can start building out messaging. Then you can start building out advertising campaigns. And from the information that you've gathered about each of those personas, you'll know what their watering holes are. Or if you don't, an agency partner will.
Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of the Destination Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Stoker. Excited to have you with us today. Just an update for everybody. We had Tom Love, who's somebody that I kind of hyped up for you guys last week, was going to join us this week in the podcast. And unfortunately, Tom got a little bit sick last weekend. So we're improvising a little bit, calling an audible. And just so you know, now that we're through kind of the birth of my baby and everything, we're not going to be so kind of down to the wire on a couple of these episodes like we've been the last few weeks. We have 3 scheduled this week that I'm really excited about. And we'll get Tom in front of you guys here pretty soon. Before we get too far into it, I do want to thank one of my friends that I met at the Texas Travel Summit. And her name was Stephanie, and she actually left us a review. So I wanted to read that. And she says, I'm really enjoying the podcast. This is a great way to hear what other DMOs are doing in digital marketing. There's some super talented people, which I didn't pay her to say that, but there's some super talented people working in the industry with amazing insights. And I think we have had some really talented people come on the podcast. And thank you, Stephanie, for your review. And I actually think we're going to have Stephanie on as a guest here pretty soon, I think, too, which is really exciting. So if you are enjoying the podcast, do what Stephanie did. leave us a review. That definitely helps us to get found easier and to improve our rankings as a podcast, and we would definitely appreciate those of you. We can see the numbers going up every week. I've had people reach out from multiple countries. I actually have new requests almost every day now for people to join the Destination Marketers LinkedIn group, and that group is growing. We've had a few people posting in there with some new information. We got some social tips recently that were really good, and want to continue to build that group. But today, I'm going to let you guys meet someone who is really involved here at Relic, does a lot of the traveling to different conferences, explores technologies, meets with several destinations, and his name is Chris Spendlove. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Adam. Good to be here. You don't get Tom Love, but you get Chris Spendlove. So
we're all about the love on this podcast.
Sharing it. Share the love. Spend the love.
I hadn't even put that together until you just said
Oh, really?
That.
Yeah.
So you get a lot of love this week, so that's good. That's good.
And hey, congrats on the baby.
Hey, you too. So guys, fun fact, Chris and I, our babies were due within a couple of days of each other, right, Chris?
Yeah.
Mine got a little impatient. Came out a couple weeks early, right?
Yeah.
You had yours on?
A week ago Wednesday. He's almost 2 weeks old.
He's almost 2 weeks old.
Yeah.
Well, congrats to you too, my friend.
Thanks. It's fun.
Yep. Neither one of us sleeping. Chris and I are both hanging by a thread right here now.
Yeah, we're doing it, but making it work. Making it work.
Nice. And mine's finally home from the NICU, so it's almost like we had the new baby thing twice, because we would go sleep in the hospital and didn't get any sleep there.
Right.
And then baby came home on Saturday, and now we're getting no sleep at home. But we're glad to have him home. And
rough.
Yeah.
He's just showing you he's going to be worth it. Right.
That's right.
He's got some big stuff in store for you.
That's
guys.
right. Or he's gonna be a headache throughout his life. We'll see. We'll find out.
Either the precursor for more, or he's getting it out of the way now. We'll just have to see.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, you guys, I'm excited to have Chris on today. And Chris, there's a question that we ask everybody that comes on the podcast. Mm-hmm. What is your dream destination? If you could go anywhere in the world, where would it be? Yeah.
So right now, the next destination I want to go to is going to be next year. We're planning a trip to Scandinavia, actually.
Wow.
I
haven't seen that PTO request come through yet.
No, this is a development. So that's kind of where we're planning on going next. I've got ancestry in all of those countries, particularly Norway and Denmark.
Is that what's driving that trip?
Partly, yeah. I kind of feel a call, if I can say that,
yeah.
Kind of like an ancestral call. Big into the Viking lore and all that kind of stuff too. So that'd be pretty cool.
You look like in another life you could have been a Viking.
I like to think that I watched that. Have you ever watched that show Vikings on History?
I haven't watched it yet. No.
The first season is very much like, it's like a drama, but they kind of walk you through the customs and stuff. But then after that, it gets like very Game of Thrones very quickly. And I guess it's all based on historical stuff. But anyway, there's this one character who's kind of big and tall with dark hair. And I'm like, I think that's the kind of Viking.
If I was a Viking, that's the one I would be.
Yeah, the big guy.
Can we let everybody know what's the name of that character? Do you remember?
Rollo. They call him Rollo the Bear, right? And I'm a big guy,
okay.
So I kind of identify.
So you're listening to the podcast today. If you've seen the show Vikings, we have Rollo the Bear with us here on the podcast today. Yeah. He's dressed a little differently, I would imagine.
Yeah, no blazers in the History Channel show, but that's okay. That's okay. So we're going to Scandinavia. The one that's always been on my list since I was a kid. I watched Rescuers Down Under quite a bit when I was a kid and just became enamored with Australia. So I'd have to say that that's like the dream. And then we're kind of getting, because a 22-hour flight is a lot.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. So
you're
we're kind of
not taking
working
your kids, are you?
No.
Okay,
no.
there you go.
Yeah, not to Scandinavia. We'll have to see how old they are when we end up getting to Australia.
Okay, so what about favorite place you've ever been?
Yeah, we actually just went to Italy earlier this year, so that was really cool. My dad had spent some time there as a young man as a missionary, more down in Sicily. When you think Italy, you think Rome, Naples, Venice, all that stuff. We actually didn't spend time in Venice or Florence or any of that. I went there when I was a kid in the 11th grade and loved Florence. Just such a cool vibe there. I mean, kind of the birthplace of the Renaissance and all the art and history and stuff there. But there was this little town down on the island of Sicily where they have this beautiful Catholic church just at the top of this hill. It's kind of almost like picturesque, right? Like a little village, little cobblestone streets, and then up at the top of the hill is this beautiful Catholic church. And on the inside, there's mosaics in gold of like stories from the Bible, from like the creation, to like the teachings of Jesus and some of the apostles and stuff, all in mosaic, just on the inside, kind of the upper walls of this church. And as a matter of fact, the day that we were there just happened to be a wedding. And so there was like this little Italian mama who was obviously the mother of the bride. And then there were all these like brothers and uncles and dads and cousins and stuff, like big male Italian guys, like lining the walls in their black suits. And it was almost like a scene out of a movie or something where we were just there. So I was able to go with my wife, and my family. And that was great. When I was in the 11th grade, I mean, it was all cool, and I'd been studying Latin and stuff. So I had more of like a working knowledge of all of that, right? Like, this is the arch that the Emperor Trajan built, or, this is what they would do in the Forum and all this stuff. But I didn't really appreciate it, But now, coming back with my wife, that was really cool. Especially being there in that place that had been important to my dad, going to that church. There just happened to be a wedding there. So just kind of some of those feelings. It was really cool.
That's awesome. Chris, I've had several people talk about Europe on the podcast here and say that either they've been there or it's their dream destination. And it's kind of funny because I'll be honest, Europe had never really appealed to me.
Really?
Yeah. We've had several people here at Relic go to Europe in the last couple of years, right?
Right, yeah.
And I'm just like, man, that sounds like a lot of money to go somewhere that, I don't know, just doesn't sound like my cup of tea. I've always been, I want to go to a tropical destination, right?
Yeah.
But I hear people talk about this stuff, and I'm picturing like the Catholic church on the hill in Sicily and the Italian wedding that you saw going on there, and it sounds awesome. And I really think that, it was somewhere I was thinking, okay, maybe when I retire, we'll go do a trip there. I think it's moving up my list.
Yeah, it's kind of accessible, I think, is the thing, right? Because like we just had somebody here go to Bali, right? Yeah. And man, you talk about, I mean, again, that's like on the other side of the world, and the cultures are very different. The cuisine is very different. The customs, the mores, all that, very different. I mean, Italy is not America by any stretch, but I think the custom, like, that this is how the bus system works, right? And that this is how you can talk with a merchant. Like, and there's, like global brands that exist there as well, right? Where if you're somewhere super off the beaten path, I think that becomes difficult. Now, for some people, like that's the appeal of a tropical destination, or getting out into the jungle or on an island just kind of by yourself. But kind of like I was alluding to earlier, like, okay, we went to Italy, we really want to go to Scandinavia, and then after that, I think I'm going to be ready for something a little bit more exotic. Australia, although again, kind of that British colony, Anglo influence kind of a thing. It's totally somewhere out of the way, you know. So I think a lot of people go to Europe as kind of a stepping stone or a way to kind of get into expansive foreign travel, and then things from there.
Interesting.
It's a theory. It's a working theory.
Yeah,
all
yeah,
anecdotal.
I like it. The book comes out when? No.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Right.
No, I want to chat a little bit though, Chris. You and I have gone to destinations all over the country for trade shows to meet with potential clients or whatever, right? Tell me a little bit about some of the trade shows that have stood out to you, that have been most interesting. Maybe they have brought in a unique speaker that stood out to you, or maybe you liked the format of the conference or anything like that. Tell me kind of what stood out to you over the years as you've gone to these conferences.
Sure, yeah. Well, so most of the ones we go to are like the state-specific ones, right? Like this year, we went to the one in Texas. Actually, two of them in Texas.
That's
the
right.
Texas Association of CVBs and the Texas Tourism Industry Association. And kind of even between those two, TACVB was a little bit more intimate, I would say. And some of the smaller destinations, folks representing smaller destinations, really came out in force. And I think that it was more of like a kind of a chill atmosphere, I would say. Not that TTIA was frantic by any means, but people were there to learn, and the booth setup, the vendor village or whatever they call it, was a little bit more lax. People kind of milling in and out, and we got to have some good conversations that way. And TTIA was a big to-do. I mean, downtown Fort Worth, a lot of the big destinations were there. A lot of, the big agencies were there, right? We're a smaller agency. There were a lot of these big national guys who deal with, the multi-million dollar accounts, that kind of thing. And just kind of the energy between the two of those, both in Texas, both ostensibly serving, the same types of people, destination marketers. It's really interesting to see the focus. And another big contrast there was when I went to the Cal Travel Summit in LA. Yeah. And I mean, for one, right, being in downtown LA, there's a crazy electric energy that's there, right? Almost where it's like you gotta catch your breath, from time to time. But as I was there, I've been to so many of these, right, like that are specifically focused on, destination marketing and either finding new tech or learning things about destination marketing, that kind of thing. As I was there at Cal Travel, it became pretty apparent that it was more politically focused. Not that I was out of place, and there weren't, there were other agencies there, and people came and talked to me about their marketing needs and that kind of thing. But kind of seeing the difference, where, I mean, it kind of opened my eyes. Like, I get the blinders on, and I'm like, yeah, it's all about the personas. It's all about the marketing tactics. We got to lay the foundation, and then we're going to know who to message, what, and when, right? All that kind of thing. But there's such a huge political component to all of this. I mean, and it's almost like a duh moment, right? But my eyes were really open when I went to LA, like, and especially in California. I mean, California being a very politically charged, politically focused state, right? Like the nation looks to California a lot and kind of takes their cues politically. And just to think about, like, wow, not only do my destination marketing partners, the people that we like, we've got a client in California, and just the fact that they have to think about all of this marketing stuff and getting visitors to their destination, all this stuff. And on top of that, or maybe even coloring all of that, there's this huge political component. They have to keep, their public happy. They have to think about how the things that they do will affect the political landscape, or how it fits into that landscape. It was a huge eye-opening experience.
Chris, that was one of the things as I got into destination marketing years ago that I found so interesting, was the people that are handling marketing for these destinations. Marketing is just a small component in a lot of cases of what these guys are responsible for. And yet they have such a big responsibility just in marketing the destination, right? There's some destinations that I've worked with that it's like they'll come up with a great marketing plan that just hits it on the nose.
Right.
And then they go present it to their board. And the board picks it apart and says no. And next thing you know, it's a vanilla campaign that doesn't take any risks and isn't impressive. And I think the politics side of it, or the political side of it, really kind of waters it down a little bit.
Yeah,
you know?
totally. Well, and there's like the general political schema, right? Like you have to think, how is this going to affect people? Like we've got a client here in Utah that was kind of wrapped up in one of these controversies nationally about, can this land be a national monument? And I'm not educated on all the particularities.
Well, we had
there.
Natalie on from San Juan
that's
County.
right. Okay,
and it was Bears Ears National Monument, and that was a big issue.
So there's big things like that, and then like you're saying, there's also like the politics, right? You think like office politics, or the politics of getting into something. The politics of getting past these gatekeepers. And, like an example of this, one of our clients down in Laredo, a few years ago, they kind of ran into the same thing where the powers that be kind of stripped down the campaign that they wanted to do. And they weren't quite so sure that it was what needed to happen, right? So like you're saying, sometimes the best of intentions can kind of get lost in the lurch when there's a political difficulty.
Sure.
Something like that.
Sure. Or something that's polarizing or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So you go to these conferences, and the political thing stood out at the Cal Travel Summit. Tell me a little bit about maybe some of the more interesting speakers that you've encountered. I know that when you and I were together at the Texas Travel Summit, we had a guy that was juggling on stage, riding a unicycle. There's been some interesting speakers. I do think a lot of these trade shows do a great job of bringing in compelling speakers. What are some of the most interesting things that you've heard at these conferences?
Yeah. When you were asking that earlier about speakers, I mean, it's hard to not think of that guy. And I wish I could remember what his name was, but he came on and he like walked on the stage, and they introduced him. He walked on stage and he was talking about, who he was and all that. And he paused and he was like, now, wouldn't this be more interesting if I did a front handsprings? And we were all like, yeah. And then he takes off his watch, and he runs off, and then he comes back on doing a front handspring. So it's kind of hard to, like a lot of other things might pale in comparison to that. But I feel like at a lot of trade shows, they try to get a really good mix of motivational speakers, kind of generally, people sharing, case studies, that kind of thing. A couple that stand out. One, actually at the one in LA, the Cal Travel Summit, they started off by having a local rap artist and storyteller and his team, a few of his students and a couple other people, it was called like I'm Alive in Los Angeles, and they did this whole rap thing about kind of the experience of being a Los Angelite, right, and kind of having a growing up experience and a culture that's so different from anywhere else in the world. So kind of that really set the tone, I feel like, because a lot of the other speakers in the conference were kind of talking about the real issues that urban Californians deal with and how that relates to, the travel industry and that kind of thing. So, finding interesting ways of setting the stage without kind of hitting people over the head with it, right? That was a great way to get us all engaged, because they rapped about, growing up there and the beach culture and poverty and homelessness and all this stuff. And it was all in this really interesting rap kind of package, put together. And then one of the other ones, I actually found this fascinating I went to DMA West in Sacramento, and
so you've been to 2 Sacramento conferences this year, right? Or
was LA and then Sacramento.
Okay.
Yeah. So
LA was the Cal Travel Summit.
LA was Cal Travel, and then DMA West jumps around. It was in Boise last year, and then Sacramento this year. But at the end, they presented some awards for different campaigns and things that have been done, and I really found that fascinating. People having a platform or a stage on which they can share the work that they've been doing and kind of what matters to them, or what has been mattering to them over the last year or so, however long it's been. Flagstaff, Arizona presented their 50 years of space travel, or they were really involved with training the astronauts who went to the moon. It was the 50th anniversary this year. And so just some kind of interesting things like that, like being able to see people's campaigns, kind of going by the numbers, that kind of thing. Obviously for us, that's one of our big focuses as an agency is, we love hearing all the anecdotal stories of how things are going, but like give me hard data. You know what I mean? And so being able to see the numbers.
How did it really perform? Right?
Yeah, right. Being able to see the numbers and that kind of thing is really interesting too.
So that all makes a lot of sense, Chris, and you've gone to a lot of these conferences. I'll tell you my big pet peeve. We go to a lot of conferences, and one of the things that I find is conferences do a great job of bringing in inspirational messages.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. You've got the juggler who rides a unicycle and tells you to be excited for the day, right?
I was.
And you were, right?
Right.
And then you've got, like, in LA, you had the rapper that came and rapped about growing up in that culture and everything. I think my problem with a lot of these conferences is I walk away feeling really inspired, but not necessarily knowing what to do next, right?
Yeah.
And
right.
I actually was asked by the Utah Tourism Industry Association last year after tourism conference what my feedback was.
Yeah.
And that was my biggest piece is I feel like there's got to be more of a tactical dispelment, which isn't a word.
It is now.
It is now of information that allows you to go do something tomorrow.
Yeah.
Go implement something tomorrow, And it was really cool this year at the Utah Tourism Conference. I was able to help facilitate rolling out a tactical track for scrappy marketers on a small budget. Here's tools I can use tomorrow, and I don't need to hire an agency to go do it, right? I can do it on my own. And I thought that turned out really, really cool. And the feedback we got from it was really, really cool.
Yeah.
If anyone's listening from a state and you put on your own tourism conference, or if you have a local conference or something like that, or if you're on the board of any of the conferences out there, I would say make sure you're giving people something they can use tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's probably my biggest pet peeve in going to some of these conferences.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you about the feedback. I mean, have you heard from folks that was refreshing or anything like that? Because, I mean, a lot of these conferences that I've been to, I haven't seen a lot of that, especially not in like the big keynote addresses, right? And I guess that's more of a platform for the inspiration and for sweeping, like this is what we're doing with the Texas travel brand, that kind of thing. But did you get pretty good feedback on those breakouts?
Oh yeah. The people that came, and it was the first year, right? And so it's not like we were wall to wall packed house, right?
Sure.
But the people that came up afterwards and just said, "Hey, this was really, really valuable." And while I hope it doesn't sound like I presented and everybody came up and said that it was wonderful, because I actually wasn't the main presentation for this. We had one person that came up and did social media assets and talked about different apps that are really, really effective, right? Another person got up and talked about digital tools that you can use now to measure the effectiveness of your marketing better and stuff like that. And so the feedback that I got after each of those presentations was really satisfied. I think now it's being consistent with it and getting the word out so that we have a packed house wall to wall, people ready to execute on that. But it's hard because in order to appreciate a talk like that or a presentation like that, you have to be a little bit humble and admit that maybe you need a little help right now, right?
Yeah.
And I think the inspirational stuff, it's really easy to listen to an inspirational speech and think, I want to be better, right? But I think it's harder to look at here's a social media training that I could go to for 45 minutes and learn some tools. Well, I have to admit at that point, I don't know all the tools that are out there, right?
Yeah.
And I think for some people that's easier than for others.
I'd be curious to see who was attending those classes. Like, was it...
Yeah, we should have taken roll.
Something like that, yeah. Or I shouldn't say classes, sorry. Those breakouts.
Yeah.
Because my guess would be that it would be the smaller DMOs that are probably attending those. Again, because it's usually a 1 or 2 person team, right?
Yep.
And I hear that and I see that all over the country as I'm going to these places. Smaller destinations that are really trying to make it work, but it's like chicken and the egg, right? Like they don't have the time to get things done, and so things don't get done, and therefore they keep getting pushed. So I'd be really curious to see if that becomes a trend, right?
Yeah.
Kind of having a more practical takeaway rather than just pure inspiration, how that works. So anyway.
Yeah, interesting stuff, man. I enjoy going to those conferences, and I feel like I learn something new every time.
Yeah, same.
Chris, I want to talk now. You and I go across the country, and we meet with destinations, and they all they all have a problem they want to solve, and some of them articulate it differently. Some of them have different priorities. Some of them it's brand. Some of it's how do I do my digital marketing and how do I distribute my traditional budget, and what's the right message, and we get all kinds of questions, right?
Yeah.
What have been some of the more interesting questions that people have had and need help with that you've seen over the last couple of years?
Totally. I think one of the biggest ones, and this is actually a phrase that I've heard enough that it now sticks when I hear it.
Yeah.
It's, we've done some marketing and we have a logo and we've done, we've got a website, all that stuff. But as we've examined, or looked at our marketing over the last couple of months or whatever precipitating event it is that causes them to take a deeper look, it's, we're just struggling to know who we are, which I think is a very interesting question, because isn't that the whole root of what we're doing as destination marketers, right? Is identifying the uniqueness of your destination, finding who it is that cares enough about that uniqueness to come and want to see it, and then communicating in interesting ways and finding the watering holes where those people are, right? That's kind of the compound thing. And so for a destination to say, we've done all this stuff, but now we're kind of going back to the drawing board and wondering who we are. I mean, the cart's here and the horse is over there, right?
No, that's really interesting, Chris, because I do feel like so many destinations, and I think part of it has to do with how many cooks are in the kitchen in destination marketing, right? But there's a lot of identity crises going on out there, right? It's, hey, we've been marketing for 5 years, and all of a sudden, I don't know if what we're saying is really the essence of who we are.
Yeah.
How do you solve for that?
Yeah. Well, it's something that you and I kind of offline have been talking about a lot lately, and I think you've mentioned this on a few episodes of the podcast already. It's the phrase, I guess, is data-driven authenticity, right? Making sure that the experience that you're putting out there about your destination is actually and factually the experience a visitor is going to have. And how do you know what your destination really is good at? How do you know where it stacks against competitors? How do you know what your personas feel about all of those things? It's got to be data-driven. And so we're working with a small destination out on the East Coast right now who, before we were working with them, didn't have very many data input channels, right? And so we're getting creative with them on how we gather that information. They've got a couple big theaters that are draws to their location. And so we're seeing if we can partner with some of the local business owners there to try to get that data. But it all stems back to, who are we? What's the big draw? And how can we be sure that is accurate, right? Because you don't want to promise something and then people get there and it underdelivers, right? But you have to be confident in that, in those proposals, those value propositions. And the only way that you can be 100% cemented in that confidence is by having data of one kind or another. So it's kind of, that was kind of tangential maybe, but it all kind of feeds off each other, right? Who are we? Well, you kind of have to know, what the attractions are in your destination, what really does make you unique. And sometimes that means looking at what your competitors are doing. What are you doing better than them? How are they beating you? That kind of thing. Are you really the, sausage capital of that state, for instance, right? Or is
which there's a lot of them out there. There's 50 of them, right?
There's 50. So you think that they've got sausage there somewhere, or bird watching.
We went beef with Life Patterson last week.
Yeah, did you?
And now we're talking about sausage. Guys, this is becoming a foodie podcast.
Well, I'm telling you, this body didn't build itself. Okay, I'll put it to you that way.
What was your Viking name? I'm going back to your Viking name.
Rollo the Bear.
Rollo the Bear.
There it is.
Rollo the Bear's body didn't build itself.
That's exactly right. But, are you really going to be able to deliver on those promises? And do the people that you think care about those things actually care about them in the ways that you're supposing? The only way to know is going back to the data.
That's really good advice. I know that you've used a tool quite a bit that I want to talk about today.
Sure.
And it's called Wonder.
Oh yeah, love Wonder.
Wonder is a software that we use. And for those of you, if you have research budget in your budget, look at Wonder, because Wonder is a lot cheaper than doing a major research initiative that includes one-on-one interviews and focus groups and all that stuff. And one of the things that I've seen when you do actual firsthand research, primary research, and don't get me wrong, it has its place. We've done it before. We'll do it again for several of our clients. But in a lot of cases, research has already been done.
Yeah.
Right? But one thing that I found in primary research is that people give you the answer that they think you want as opposed to the real answer, because they're trying to figure out the whole time, what are you getting at? What are you trying to figure out? Because I want to help you solve that. When in reality, I just want your unfiltered, here's my reaction to this question, right? But what Wonder does, and it's secondary research. So basically, if there's been research done on the topic, Wonder will have a master's level researcher or above go out and within 24 hours put together a comprehensive report, right, of everything that's out there in answer to this question.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about maybe a couple of the Wonder requests that you've submitted. And by the way, everybody, Wonder doesn't pay me to talk about this, right?
Not yet.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe they'll sponsor us. No, the thing about Wonder, though, is that it's really shortcutted a lot of our manual process that we've had to do with research. So tell us about some of the stuff you've done with Wonder.
Yeah. Oh, man, it's been a lot. So a couple of the big things that we do, one of our offerings, especially for clients who are trying to decide whether it's time to bring in an agency or not, is a competitive analysis. So like kind of like I was mentioning before, sometimes it's helpful for a destination to know what other competing destinations are doing in terms of what their attractions are, what their visitation numbers are, and then more specifically and more granularly, what they're doing digitally, right, with their digital marketing. So we use Wonder to pull a lot of the broader data, right? The attractions, top attractions, visitation numbers, any trends going on in that destination, that sort of thing. We've got other tools that help us, with the other information. But being able to, like you said, shortcut the process of me having to go out or somebody on my team going out and collecting all that data, Wonder takes care of that, and it's 24 to 48 hours, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
The other huge thing, and this is, you were kind of asking me big questions that destinations have or big problems, that kind of thing. They've got a general idea and sometimes a pretty specific idea of who their audiences are, but they don't have fully fleshed out personas. They don't have names. They don't have psychographics. The demographics, a lot of times they've got on lockdown, but the psychographics elude a lot of these destinations. And so being able to go to Wonder and say, if we can, right, we say, this is the data we have from this destination's Google Analytics. Can you corroborate this with other visitation data? And then can you take that demographic information that we've gathered from the analytics and from other data and tell me about the psychographics of that group of people?
Yeah.
And having Wonder as a tool to be able to do that, oh my gosh, I can't tell you the number of hours that saves. I mean, I did research projects in school just like everybody else, but they've got proprietarily like paid access to a lot of research services and that kind of thing. And again, so we kind of daisy chain the value, right?
Yeah.
They have that kind of access. We have access to them. And so, new or existing clients or anyone who wants us to, help them out with that, it really saves a lot of time. And then any other question. I mean, a lot of times when we're putting together proposals, in the RFP, it'll be like, state your working understanding of our destination. And we've been a lot of places as a team, but having Wonder as a tool to help us know like what some of the current trends are, in this destination, like there are new developments coming in, or, this is kind of the influx of new businesses that they've seen over the last few years. It's incredibly valuable.
Yeah, I'll tell you one of the shortcuts that Wonder did for us that I thought was really interesting. We have a client that earlier this year wanted to launch a campaign in Boston and San Francisco, right?
Yep.
We had bought a lot in San Francisco.
Right.
We had not yet bought in Boston. And so what the normal process would be is we would have someone on our media team, like a media coordinator or something like that, take hours and hours and learn who all the billboard companies are in Boston and all the radio stations and all the newspapers and all the magazines and all the different traditional media channels that are out there, and put together a full report along with demographics and psychographics of their audiences, and basically, okay, if this is your persona, here's the different media channels that you can reach through that. And instead of taking a week with a media coordinator focused solely on that,
Right.
we were able to have Wonder within 24 hours or maybe 48. I can't remember.
But even
on that
so,
one.
right?
Yeah.
Even so.
They went and did it, and we had 2 man-hours to put that together. And that's, you guys, there are so many tools out there that shortcut things for you that you're doing manually right now and is taking so much of your time. And I think Wonder is a great example of one of those tools. What are some of the other tools, Chris, that you're using to kind of help you put together the competitive landscape so that when somebody, because I know when somebody wants to have us look at messaging for them, for example, we want to understand, okay, how are they positioned in the marketplace and who has similar attractions that might be more appealing to our personas, right? And so figuring out where destinations stand in comparison to their competitors, what other tools are you using for that?
Yeah, so there's a few free tools, and there's some others that are paid that we pay as an agency to subscribe to. A couple of the free ones that you, dear listener, should definitely be using are Moat, and it's just moat.com, and through Moat, M-O-A-T, like around a castle, and you can see what display ads, online display ads, any brand is using, and you just type the name of the brand into the little search bar on the homepage, and it'll pop it up immediately. So visit and then enter, the name of the competitor, and it'll pull up any display ads they have running, if they have any running.
Yeah.
The nice thing about Moat too is it also tells you when they ran, so you can kind of see, if they're seasonality, right? And you can kind of see, if they're still active or not. Adjacent to that, and kind of equally helpful, is because of all the interesting privacy stuff that's been going on with Facebook, and I'll let you comment on that on your own. But because of those things that have been happening now, transparency is an important thing when I guess before it wasn't.
Yeah. You guys remember the Cambridge Analytica scandal when all the data got leaked on Facebook. That was a really crappy thing for advertisers, except for one thing.
Because now you can go on the Facebook page of your competitor or any public Facebook page, and there's a link on the right hand side, and it basically allows you to look at any Facebook ads that are run by that page, and it, kind of in the context of this issue, right? There were ads being run that weren't officially coming out from these people. So the advantage that we have now is we can say, oh, this is an official ad from them. This is the actual messaging, that kind of thing, coming out of this destination.
Yeah, I think the point of it, the reason Facebook did it was more, I need to see if Russians are placing this ad or if it's a real ad, right?
I was trying to tiptoe around that, but
no, we'll go right into it, because that was the reason, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
The unintended consequence is now it's very easy to look how we're positioned compared to our competition, because you right now, destination marketer listening, can go to any Facebook page and see if they are running ads, what the creative is right now. And Chris, I know there's a lot more tools that you use. We're kind of running out of time here.
Oh no, already. Man, it goes fast. I hear everybody say it goes fast, and here we are.
It's flown by, yeah. But I do want to have you answer a question for me, and that's, is there anything maybe that I haven't asked you on today's episode that you've seen in your conversations with destinations, advice that you would give that may be unilateral to everybody that would benefit our listeners?
Yeah. So one of the main issues that I see is, and just kind of going back to what we were talking about a minute ago, is not having your foundation set before you start building out marketing and advertising. And by foundation, I specifically mean having the answer to that all-important question, who are we, right? Knowing exactly who your, not only audience segment, but having the persona built out. I don't see that a lot. And then taking that information, even big destinations, and it's crazy. And anyway, it's something that I feel like is pretty fun. I mean, that's marketing 101, right? Is knowing who it is you're trying to sell to, and so kind of having those foundational things laid before you get to something like messaging creation, which is you're not even yet in the marketplace, right? Having the data backing your understanding having data backing your decision making, taking that data and building out fully fleshed, fully realized personas. Give them a name, give them an occupation, give them a list of fears if you need to, right? And then from there saying, great, this is who we're trying to talk to. This is the list of our unique value propositions that we've identified. Let's map these value propositions to the needs of each persona. And then you can start building out messaging. Then you can start building out advertising campaigns. And from the information that you've gathered about each of those personas, you'll know what their watering holes are. Or if you don't, an agency partner will, right? Because, if you say, well, I think that these 65 plus people are all reading this one magazine, right? But you don't have any data backing that up, then you're going to be running into problems. Same thing, like if you're saying, well, I know my aged parents are all over Facebook, so I should probably put ads for them on Facebook. It has to be based on actual factual data. So that's what I would say. Having those foundations laid, then building the house on top of that, instead of saying, hey, here's a funny little tagline for our destination. Let's try to fit this square peg into the round hole of who we think is going to be coming.
I want you guys to know that if Chris's mic wasn't on a stand, he would have just dropped the mic right now. Boom. Chris, good job. I appreciate you going through that with us. I think we've got a lot of valuable information from this episode, so thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, just a reminder for everybody, we've got the Destination Marketers LinkedIn group. It is growing daily. I feel like while I was in the hospital with my baby over the last couple of weeks, it was like I kept hitting approve on new people wanting to join the LinkedIn group. We just had a new post within the last hour in the group with kind of an instructional video out of New Zealand, which was kind of cool. And so I would love to have more and more of you that are like passive listeners. You know who you are. Why don't you get active and click into the LinkedIn group and start sharing your knowledge like so many other people have and will continue to do. So join that. And other than that, just a reminder to leave us a review. It helps us, even if you're just hitting the star rating, hopefully you'll give us a 5-star rating. We'd appreciate a 5-star rating. But if you feel that it's less than 5 stars, no, be honest. I was going to tell you something else, but be honest. Yeah, be honest. We'll have you be honest this time. But hey, thanks everybody. This has been another episode of the Destination Marketing Podcast, and we'll see you soon.